welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Today we are going to see what we can do with all of these spring onions or scallions. So spring onions and scallions are pretty much the same thing. It's just it just depends on when they're actually picked from the garden. So that's probably a largish spring onion, and then I think they become scallions after that, or it might be the other way around. But anyway, I'm going to show you what I do with these spring onions or scallions. Stick around. The first thing I want to do is clean these up a little bit. So, and just by clean them up, I mean chop off the roots and break off the ends that are a bit spindly. And I'll just have the onions looking like that, or these. So all you need to do is just grab, because we're using the green and the white, just grab the end of the scallion or spring onions, bring it in and yank it off like that. So I'm not going to use these bits. I could, I've got enough of it here so I don't really need to. And then I'm going to chop the roots off, just like that. Now this has actually got 3 separate ones in here, so although they look like big onions, they're actually not that big. So just peel off the outer leaves, and then we'll end up with 3 separate stalks. Now we're going to just give this a clean, and then all we're going to do is chop this up into small pieces. And I'm going to fry these. So the first recipe I'm making is a spring onion soup. And it'll be a nice creamy spring onion soup. Rather than putting a potato in it, I'm going to put some cream in it, and I'll add some mushrooms to this as well. So I'm going to take about 2 bunches of spring onions, and we're going to put that into the soup. So all we want to do is chop this up. Now you don't have to chop this up too finely, because I am going to put this through the food processor as well. But what I want to do is fry them really gently, just to get some flavour through, or draw out some of the flavour. Now we're coming up to the green part, and I want to keep some aside just to sprinkle over the top of the soup later. And you can use the other end if you like, but these are just nice and crispy, so I'll keep some of these and set them aside. So set this aside, and we'll put that on top of the soup after. And keep chopping. So I have a little bit of butter, well actually I have quite a lot of butter, that I'm just melting in the base of this fry pan, and I'm going to do these spring onions or scallions in 2 batches, just because I've chopped up quite a lot. So what I want to do is just put that into the pan and saute it. I don't want to brown them, but I do want to soften them and draw out the flavours. So I'll just heat that through, and I'll add some salt and pepper. We'll actually season this with some chicken stock as well. So this lot of onions has sautéed nicely, and I'm going to just pop it into a food processor here. But because it's hot, I'm going to add a cup of water, just cold water. And that's really just so that it doesn't melt my food processor. I do need to add water anyway for the soup. And I'll get the rest of the onions and fry those off as well, and then we can blend it all together. It's a nice thick pulp here. And I'm going to add another cup of water to this so that I can do the same with the next pot. Now, while I blend the next lot of spring onions, I'm just going to add some mushrooms. So I'm just using the button cup mushrooms, and I'm adding about half a dozen or so nice large mushrooms, roughly chopped. And I'll saute those in the butter for a little bit. So there's the rest of the spring onions, all mashed to a pulp, and that can go into the big pot with the rest of it. What we're going to do now is add some water. So I'm going to add 1.5 litres of water. I've got 1.5 litres of water here, which will clean out my bowl, and also the 2 cups that I did earlier. So that ends up being 2 litres of water, and pop that into the pot. Pop it in the pot. And we'll turn that one on and bring it to the boil. So the mushroom's fried up nicely. I can take that off the heat now and just leave it. When my soup comes to the boil, I'll add the mushrooms to that. So with the liquid, you can either use a couple of litres of water and add some chicken stock, or you can use a couple of litres of ready-made broth. So if you're using a chicken stock, go easy on the stock first, just so that you can taste it and see that it's okay. I'm going with 1 tablespoon of the chicken stock to start with, and then I'll taste it as it's cooking through and see if I need any more. So I'll bring that one to the boil. When that's boiling, I'll add my mushrooms to it. There's one other thing I'm going to do with this soup, and that is add eggs. So it'll be like an egg drop mushroom spring onion soup. Now, the reason I'm using eggs, well, actually I love egg drops or scrambled eggs in soup, so it's something that I had when I was a kid. But when we were carb lovers, we used to have pasta or little macaronis or sometimes even rice in the soup. So rather than doing that, but still actually having something that looks like it might be pasta, I'm just putting some eggs in there. So because I'm using a large pot, I'm going to add you'd probably add 3 or 4 eggs. I'm just going to do 3 because I'm using a lot of mushrooms. And then just whisk it together. Make that 4 eggs. Usually if I'm making a small soup, I might use 1 egg per person, or the equivalent of 1 egg per person. So as this is quite a large pot of soup, I'll do some extra. So that will go into the soup just before it's finished. The soup's almost to the boil, so I'm going to put the mushrooms in. And I'm just going to simmer that for about 10 minutes. And I have tasted this and it's not quite salty enough, so I'm actually going to put in another spoonful of, this is actually just a dessert spoon, not a tablespoon. So just another spoon of chicken stock, but keep on tasting it to make sure that it's got the right amount of flavours for you. To give it a bit of kick, you can put in a little bit of chilli too. Just a sprinkle. And simmer that for about 10 minutes. And then once we're ready to serve, we'll put the egg drop, or drop the eggs in there, and we'll put the onions that we set aside earlier. So the soup's been simmering for about 10 minutes now, and this is the egg that we whisked together earlier. So just to drop it in, all you need to do is just bring it in to the pan just like this. So it kind of just swirls around in the pan. And if you're impatient, you can put more in and then just stir it through. So it just adds a little bit of texture to the soup. I'm not sure if you can see all the little white bits in there. So it just adds a nice flavour, nice little bit of texture and some good nutrients to your soup. And by now you would have also tasted it to make sure that it's salty enough, it's got enough spices if you decided to put some chilli in there. And these are the greens that we chopped up earlier, and I'm just going to sprinkle some of those on top. And the soup's almost ready to serve. So I'll just give that another couple of minutes. Now, usually when I do soups, I actually add cream to it to thicken it up. I think this is actually quite nice on its own, so I'm not going to do that with this one. But if you want to have a nice, hearty, thick soup, add some cream to it at this point as well. But this is done. And if you have a nice low-carb bread that you want to have with it as well, or some toast with a nice slashing of butter, that'll be great with it too. Okay, soup's up. So I didn't end up putting the cream in, as I said. It's nice and thick because of the egg, the mushroom, and all the chunky bits of onion, spring onion going through. So I think that's looking really nice. And there we have it, spring onion, egg drop and mushroom soup. Bon appetit!